Have you ever had the feeling that there is a physiological barrier or a wall setting itself up in your throat? It might feel kind of like an impenetrable ceiling or even like a choking feeling. You might be dealing with some unconscious or unmanaged pharyngeal constriction, your swallowing muscles actually trying to help you, but unknowingly creating inhibition or inefficiency. Today, I hope to give you some accessible and direct tools you can use to gain agency over this part of your vocal tract and thereby experience more choice and freedom in the sounds you make. This continues the vocal tract shaping series we've been working on. We've already covered laryngeal position and anterior-posterior narrowing of the pharynx using the back of the tongue. Today, we're going to move a little higher in the tract into the muscular tube we call the pharynx and address the pharyngeal constrictors themselves. Hey there, if you're new here, my name's Dan Callaway. I teach musical theater voice and vocal pedagogy at Boston Conservatory at Berkeley. More than 25 years kicking around on equity stages and more than 15 years helping folks get to work on Broadway, national tours, regionally and around the world. And I'm very glad you're here with me today. Welcome. So what are your pharyngeal constrictors? You have three of them: superior, middle, and inferior. They create a muscular funnel from the nasopharynx all the way to your esophagus. They are responsible for swallowing, so go ahead and notice their work. Great job, pharyngeal constrictors. You feeling yourself swallow? That happens on average 500 to 700 times per day. Your pharyngeal constrictors are also key components in the sounds you make because they directly change the shape of the resonating body of your voice. So, of course, they have an immense impact on what's happening when we sing. They influence your tone, your airflow, intonation, and resonance quality. Their muscular function is just as their name tells you. They constrict when they engage, which makes the tube narrower. So it's a basic binary of options here. They can engage and constrict, or they can soften. But like all things in singing, there is a large continuum between these two options. I like what the folks at Complete Vocal Institute call this. They say singing requires managed constriction. Consciousness of what your constrictors are doing and the ability to give them gentle directives. So let's look at your pharynx, your constrictor muscles, first in light of your skeletal arrangement and relationship. Let's locate the top of your spine. If you put your fingers here in front of your ears, you'll create an imaginary line going through your head. The midpoint of this line is the top of your spine, where your skull rests in a joint called the atlanto-occipital, or the AO joint. The skull rests on top of your top vertebra, which is called the atlas. Your skull is able to move along that top vertebra. This is very big information when you know this, because you can truly notice how and where your skull rests and moves. So just this bit of info helps you align the skull and feel your ears floating over your shoulders. Now what happens if your skull, leaves its alignment neighborhood? I got the word neighborhood from an Alexander teacher in LA, and I like it because it promotes movement and coordination rather than static stuckness. Like even the word posture can make you go a little rigid, I think. So I like words like body use, neighborhood, things that promote dynamic movement. But just think about what happens when a couple of common singer habits influence where your head is. Number one, what if the head juts or reaches forward? This is a common impulse because we're noticing our voice comes out of our mouth, which is on the front of our body. So the brain may tell the muscles to move the head forward to get the sound source closer to the communication target. But if you just put a light touch here above and around the top of your larynx, you can feel the muscular changes. So even if I sing an ah vowel in a speechy range, listen to the sound outcome when I shift the neighborhood of my head. Ah. So your skeleton and its alignment are the architectural structure of your body energy and the way your voice moves. So keep your skeleton in mind. It really helps me to let muscular groups soften and cooperate when I think about my bones first, my skeletal structure. Another singer habit that happens a lot is protrusion of the mandible or our jawbone, our jaw muscles. This happens for a few reasons. So folks often feel like this gives them some sort of solidity and support right here at the laryngeal level, because singing is scary, and letting all this vibrating expression move through you in a released way feels super vulnerable, because it is. So we reach for things that make us feel more secure. Another reason we protrude the jaw, and this is just my theory from my own experience, I believe it gives the illusion of increased resonance, but this is dependent on your own physiology. For me, if I move the jaw forward, my mandible comes closer to my eardrum, and so I feel like the bone conductivity, the vibration of my jaw rings louder to my internal hearing when my jaw is a little farther forward. So I may be deceiving myself into thinking that I'm creating more resonance than I really am. So if I demo that, so I noticed when I protruded my jaw, I actually had to adjust my tongue more to make the vowel sound more like ah, and that actually brought in a little bit more root tongue tension as well. So it's interesting the domino effect that sets up. So the neck protrusion and then the jaw protrusion, two things that affect the pharyngeal muscles in really unhelpful ways, I think. So really, any inefficient alignment in our skeleton is going to call on compensatory muscles to keep us held up. And that's going to affect how energy and vibration moves through us. Even if you're playing a character who has a different skeletal relationship or postural presentation, say like Quasimodo in Hunchback, or if you're the beggar woman in Sweeney Todd, or even say Richard III in Shakespeare, depending on the interpretation, you as the artist will need to find how to embody the authentic energetic expression of this person while finding maximal efficiency and sustainability in the portrayal. So always start there at your skeleton. A quick body scan can show you how things are relating, and you can start to figure out things as you feel what's most efficient. A lot of it will be unfamiliar since we live in quite a hunched over, and tightly wound up world these days. So this has power to really change how you move through your day to day. So now we'll zero in on what's going on with the pharyngeal constrictors themselves. In the last video, I talked about the magical powers of the back of your tongue and its role in producing anterior-posterior narrowing, front-to-back narrowing in the pharynx. Today, we're going to look at the other direction, what Carrie Obert calls lateral-medial narrowing. That means the walls of your pharynx are drawing in toward the midline this way. So in some sounds, this is helpful for brightening and boosting tone. This kind of narrowing is also necessary for certain vocal effects like distortion, and it's even what's used for throat singing. At other times, this coordination can inhibit and limit efficiency, of course, depending on the kind of sound you want to make. So remember, if it's a sound you can make over and over every day, then it's a sound that's on the table, and it has something to inform other sounds. And then we have to become conscious of this coordination, because unconscious use of it can create unwanted static engagement. It can muffle resonance that we want to release, and it can limit your options for expression. So the goal is responsive management, layering in your relationship to this part of your tract into procedural memory so that it becomes one of the many dials you can turn for various sonic outcomes. You want to experience the continuum of options. So think about any time we have an intense emotional expression. The pharyngeal walls often constrict in concert with the rest of the body that's expelling big emotions. So if we have anger, okay, get ready, I'm about to be angry. Hey, back off! Or if there's pain, if I have pain, oh! oh, that's very squeezy. Or even if there's intense love and adoration. So like even like you think about how when you see really cute, like, oh, I just want to eat you up. You're so cute. So those sorts of coordinations are always happening in intense emotional expression. You can just make a list and just see how the body just really squeezes on intense emotion. So everything in the body engages around this emotional expression. Singing is truly an art form because we are training the body to coordinate in a different way. We're letting charged emotional vibration move through a softened space. Your torso muscles are engaging to vibrate air through you, and you're managing your pharynx to soften to be affected by the vibration. That feels vulnerable and strange. So this is why singing requires training most of the time. At least it did and does for me. So you can feel and influence these muscles. It's very subtle and nuanced. So it takes some time to get to know them. So let's start by feeling what the action of narrowing feels like. So like a gentle, frustrated growl is a good place to start. So notice how the side walls of your pharynx are coming in towards themselves. That makes me think of Marge Simpson. Is that Marge? She's more there. I can't tell it. In my case, you can hear the vestibular folds vibrating, the folds that are above your vocal folds, often called the false folds. These structures are what create distortion in other sounds. So, frustration growl. Notice how the pharynx is making kind of an emotion bottleneck there for you. If you really let your anger through, there'd be a lot more sound and force. Another way to feel narrowing is what I call vomity disgust. So something you find really repulsive. That sort of feeling. Or even something very painful. You can feel that sort of squeeze. So here again, the pharyngeal walls are narrowing into the middle. If you suspect that this narrowing coordination may be inhibiting your singing, I think it's helpful to actually give it a full expression to the muscular engagement. So like anything in life, the things we try to avoid have a way of amplifying themselves in our consciousness. So giving them an opportunity to have a full life often helps us understand what they're trying to do in the first place. So if your tongue wants to seize up when you sing, let it have a full life and see what it's about. So if it's your jaw, let that really engage fully and see what's there. So when we pay curious attention to these engagements, they often start to balance and resolve. It's the same way that we feel like we can calm down if someone meets us with curiosity and the desire to understand us. If someone's ignoring you or telling you just to relax, it usually doesn't have a very therapeutic effect, at least not in my experience. So yeah, you want to give it a full life. If it's lateral pharyngeal narrowing, see what that feels like to let it fully squeeze. And always pay attention. You don't want to feel pain or anything you wouldn't want to repeat. And if you do, just take a beat and note what that coordination was that you don't want to continue. Unconscious narrowing often shows up as a feeling of squeeze and just what the muscles there are called, constriction. So say if I'm moving a little higher in my range and I experience something like, if I do, so notice first that my head left its alignment neighborhood there. So what if I just let my head come back into relationship with my spine and thorax? That's literally just skeleton alignment. And then what if I bring my head into alignment and I'm still experiencing some pharyngeal narrowing and squeeze there? Sort of feeling sort of an inner squeeze. Now what? So here's the tricky thing about your constrictors. They only have one thing they do when they engage. They constrict. So it's the softening of them that provides the most resonant space in the pharynx. This is strange when you really want to do something to boost your sound. So letting something soften is counterintuitive when you want an activity, but that is what's necessary. So to access this, I use a funny idea called Botox pharynx. If you Google angry Botox face, you'll get all kinds of images and snarky memes with paralyzed faces attempting to show expression. So one that I use a lot is, "I'm so angry at you." Or if you say, "I'm really upset, I'm really trying to frown, but I can't." So really kind of letting like emotional intensity go through you, but like your face is disabled. So since Botox has rendered facial muscles immobile, emotion comes through an oddly neutral expression. So singing can often feel like this. I say, imagine your pharynx has been similarly disengaged and move some intense vibration through it. So if I've got my pharynx is disengaged. "I'm so angry. I'm in deep emotional anguish. You have betrayed me." So these sorts of expressions coming through a soft pharynx, they feel really funny. It's silly, and it also shows you how a lot of the great actors let Oedipus or Medea through them in such powerful ways. It's the same with singing. I also often reference Christine Baranski in her role in The Gilded Age. If you haven't seen that, I recommend it. She's really terrific. She has that combination of pharyngeal release and a high, soft palate in her speech, and so she sounds kind of like, "We belong to the old New York." You can feel that space opening up all the time. The soft palate is very high because she is of high status, and the pharynx is very soft because she went to Juilliard. Another terrific example is Annette Bening in this really terrific film, Being Julia. It was more than 20 years ago, but I still remember this film. She was really great in that. In the last part of the film, she plays a very triumphant scene on a stage full of rage and really delicious revenge. So you just have to watch that. It's terrific. But always keep your ears tuned to different voices and ask what the vocal tract is doing. Just listen to voices around you and think, where's their larynx? What's their tongue doing? What's the pharynx doing? Where's their soft palate? And you can really start to identify what coordinations make certain sounds, and you'll also be able to tune into like what the psychological contributors to those shapes are. So you're working on a softened pharynx. Here's another tool I find super helpful to help you release sideways. So take a very small scale, like a 3-note scale maybe. Let's just work on an E vowel, and we'll sing it slowly. E. So now that we're getting more familiar with what the lateral engagement feels like, go ahead and play with that and notice the effects. E. My tongue might be narrowing back a little bit too, but I'm trying to really focus in on just this lateral narrowing. Now, in order to feel the release of these muscles, I want you to pretend that you have 2 rubber bands ever so gently attached to the side walls of your pharynx. So you'll hook your fingers into these rubber bands and just give them a gentle sideways tug. So now sing the scale with the sideways pull. And just see if you notice any difference in the feeling there. You can then play with the continuum using your rubber bands as guides. So you start the scale, squeeze a little, and then pull your softened pharyngeal muscles wide and see if any differences occur. So it would kind of be like, I'm literally thinking of the pharyngeal wall softening so that they can be affected. They can be pulled sideways by these gentle rubber bands. Sometimes if you think of yourself as like a frilled lizard, that's a fun image as well. So these muscles are so nuanced that they are suggestible by imagery. That's why voice teachers often use imagery. But it's really important to understand like why a certain image elicits a certain physiological arrangement. I'm adding a few more pharyngeal release tools in the resource library very soon, so you can check out that link in the description if you want to explore more tools on this. There are free preview modules available for you to see there as well, so if you want to see the structure as we continue to build it this summer, check that out there. So remember, pharyngeal constriction isn't a bad thing or something to avoid. Just like your tongue has to be active and engaged in many ways to sing well, your pharynx has all kinds of possibilities for arranging itself in acoustically favorable ways. And it's really about giving yourself clearer consciousness and perception of what's going on in all places in your vocal tract and layering in procedural memory that's immediately responsive to your artistry. So give your muscles the chance to fully engage in the direction they're trying to employ. See what's there, get curious about their intentions, and then Let those energy groups look along with you at the vocal task. Your body will notice things very quickly and start to coordinate in very free and efficient ways. You have a lot of agency in what you do with the vocal tract, and giving yourself freedom to play is key in discovering this. If we get worried and obsessed with making right sounds, right or wrong sounds, we're going to limit ourselves from a lot of discovery. In the next video about vocal tract, we're going to look at how to make friends with your soft palate and how its movement directly influences the pharynx. If you missed the first 2 videos in this series, you can check out the vocal tract playlist and learn about laryngeal neighborhood and how the back of your tongue is a super magical thing when it comes to sound shaping. And again, you can take a look at the free preview modules in the resource library by clicking the link in the description of this video. Ask me any questions you have about your pharynx and vocal tract. Let me know if anything changed for you with these ideas and little exercises. Most of all, please remember there is only one you, and somebody would love to hear the story that only you can sing. Love much. Now go sing.